Velvet Buzzsaw is a brand new Netflix original movie written and directed by Dan Gilroy, the same guy that brought us Nightcrawler. And to describe this film in a nutshell is actually kind of hard. Because it's a dark comedy that's set in the LA art scene that also dabbles in elements of horror as well. I mean, the plot is pretty straightforward. A woman who works for an art company realises that someone in her flat has died, and he also happened to be an artist. Unfortunately, his art, when putting up in the exhibitions, starts to kill people. That's the best way I can put it. The art comes alive, is haunted, and it starts killing the people who have bought those paintings of the dead guy. And that's kind of all you need to know about this film. I was really interested in seeing this movie for the main reason of who's involved with it. Dan Gilroy really blew me away with Nightcrawler back in 2014. I think that is a great film, and it's really nice to see previous collaborators from that film returning in this one, such as Rene Russo and Jake Gyllenhaal. And if I'm going to start off with the positives, those are probably the best aspects I can give this film. The look of the movie is very good. I don't think the direction and cinematography is as slick as it was in Nightcrawler, but it's still pretty good, especially for what they're trying to go for, and to try and balance the many tones that this movie goes for in terms of a visual aspect. I think they do a pretty decent job. I do think the cinematography could have been a little bit more nicer and more stylish, but I think for what they were going for, it works fine. And the acting is great from pretty much everyone, with the highlight being Jake Gyllenhaal as this kind of eccentric, also kind of a dick art critic. He steals every scene that he's in, and honest to God, every moment he's on screen, he is just perfect. He's that right balance of serious arsehole whilst also being camp in a almost over-the-top way, but never pushing it too over the top. It's just that right level of exaggerated performance that makes it work on a comedic level at a few times. Rene Russo's also really good in this film. Toni Collette I really liked, even though she doesn't get much to do here. I thought she was actually pretty good, and again it looks like she's having fun with the role, similar to Gyllenhaal with his role as well. It's really interesting to see Billy Magnussen in this film, who I previously saw in Game Night, and I thought he was pretty good in Game Night, but his character was a bit one note in that, where he was just playing the dumbass. Here he gets a little bit more to do, and I did like the certain things that his character was given. And yeah, I suppose if I have one nitpick with the cast, and it's not really a casting problem, it's Daveed Diggs, who was brilliant in last year's Blind Spotting, one of my favourite films of last year, and he's really good here as well, except he's not given much to do, and I feel like he's greatly underutilised. And that doesn't just apply to him, that applies to a couple of other actors as well, like Natalie Dyer, I think her name is, from Stranger Things. She's in the film as well, but again, she is kind of underutilised. The scenes that she's in are really bloody funny, because they do this reoccurring joke with her character, and it's actually kind of funny. But I just wish they'd done something a little bit more with her character, and the same goes for Daveed Diggs' character as well. Also, the one thing that I was sceptical about with this movie, and I don't think it works to its full advantage, but it works pretty well for the most part, is the two kind of conflicting tones. The dark comedy satire on the art industry and the art world, and the horror aspect where the art comes to life and starts killing people. When it goes for one tone or the other, it's really good, but when the tones start to mesh, it doesn't kind of work, because it's not jarring in a sense, it's just, it lacks a little bit of consistency. But like I said, when it goes all out in one of the two tones, it is pretty damn good, because this movie was also surprisingly funny, especially in regards to the whole art world satire aspect of it, because there were a few moments where they poked fun at the criticism of art and just art in general, and it genuinely had me laughing my arse off. And I was not expecting that from this movie, at least as much as I ended up enjoying it. And that is probably also another positive I can give this film. No matter how many how negatives or positives you can find with this film, it is pretty damn entertaining. Like, I can thoroughly say that I enjoyed myself while watching this film. Even though I know it's not perfect, I had a blast watching it, and I think that's the most important thing. Though it doesn't nail every aspect, the overall feel of the film and your enjoyment of it shouldn't really be hindered. I think you'll have a great time watching it no matter what, which is why I'm glad it's on Netflix, because it's a fairly accessible film, and having it on that platform just makes it that whole lot more watchable and engaging. Now, I suppose my one major negative with the movie is that I feel like it could have gone a little bit further, especially in regards to the over-the-top horror, art coming alive and killing people aspect of it. Because when it does happen in the movie, it is kind of what you're expecting. It's slightly over the top, it's really kind of stupid, but it's fun to watch. But that being said, like I just said a minute ago, it's kind of what you're expecting. Like, the setup to each of these deaths and the way they go about concluding those deaths are fairly entertaining to watch, but I just feel like they could have pushed it that little bit more, really emphasised the over-the-top craziness and bizarre nature of these things happening. Instead, it just kind of feels like they just pop up every so often. That's why I said at the start of this review that it just feels like a dark comedy with horror elements in it. Rather than being a dark comedy horror, it just feels like a dark comedy for about 80% of it, with these horror bits sprinkled in. If they had really gone all out with the horror element and really made it pop and just made it that bit more bizarre and impactful, then I think it would have nailed the overall feel and style of the movie just that little bit more. Don't get me wrong, like I said, I did have fun watching this film, but if it had just fully committed to the bizarre nature of the very premise it has set up, then I think it would have been much better for it. In the end, I'm going to give Velvet Buzzsaw a 7 out of 10. I think out of most reviewers on YouTube, I'm going to be one of the more lenient ones, because I've seen quite a few reviews for this film and they have not been positive in the slightest. But I'm willing to give it a 7 out of 10 because I can see the potential of how batshit crazy this film could have gone. And also, I really enjoyed what I got for the most part. So I'm willing to give it a 7. I don't think I can really give it any higher. I think a 7 is kind of the limit of what I can give it. So guys, that was my review for Velvet Buzzsaw. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Bye.